Welcome to Re-Review, where we watch movies from the past with a perspective from today. Your hosts are Matt, Bobby, and Austin, and we love the films from our youth, so we're taking a look back to see if they still hold up. On this episode, we're discussing The Rocketeer. Based on a graphic novel by Dave Stevens, it was released in 1991, directed by Joe Johnston, and stars Billy Campbell, Jennifer Connelly, Alan Arkin, and Timothy Dalton. This movie tells the story of a pilot living the ultimate dream in the skies. Now, this is a fair warning. We're spoiling a 32-year-old film, so if you haven't seen it, we will be revealing key plot points. You know, you think of things that open up in such a way that feel epic, and I feel like this movie does that. You kind of get to dive right into this world of you're getting introduced to someone who's clearly a stunt pilot. You get this really cool looking plane that comes in, and the whole entire takeoff sequence is set to some really legit music that makes you feel like you're ready to fly in the skies, even though you're not necessarily sure. You have an idea what the movie's about, but just to begin with, I was like, oh, this is going to be like a kick-ass, plane film. And in fact, part of me kind of wants that movie. Was that what was supposed to happen with part two? I don't know. But just the way it opens, I love the epic, takeoff, that initial takeoff, this very bright yellow plane. And I love the shots with the shots of the plane in flight. I thought it looked so good. And I think I was just taken aback because I'm so used to CG ruling the world. Mm-hmm. And you think of anything now with anything in the sky, it's not real, right? Unless Tom Cruise is flying it, maybe. It's kind of impressive, right?
Although there are some shots that really looked like they were flying. Like, it wasn't just like, looked like it was him in a plane and you could just see the sky. You could actually see like stuff flying by near them. And there was a lot of stuff in this movie where I was pretty impressed with the effects, because there's a bunch of stuff where I'm not exactly sure how they did it.
Go on.
There's one shot where like behind the back of the rocket shot where he's flying, and it's kind of like a GoPro style, like mounted to the rocket kind of shot where he's flying. And it's like, how on earth did they do that? Did they like put him on a crane and like drive him through or whatever, like speed it up? Like there's a lot of really good effects in this movie, I thought. But I thought that most of them held up pretty well.
That was the invention of the GoPro. It was there in that moment. But we get introduced to Cliff, who's this pilot, and just happens to fly over an FBI chase. They just decide, well, there's a plane, let's shoot at it. There are times when bad guys make questionable decisions. That was a very interesting one of, let's just shoot it at whatever we could shoot at. There was a heavy amount of Tommy guns in this movie.
That's because it was an FBI surveillance stunt plane and they had to get rid of it.
Oh, that's what it was?
Yeah.
Thank you for buying into the story part that I did not pick up on. But it causes the plane to go down, and it really sets up the whole notion of how he gets this jetpack or rocket that he'll eventually fly throughout the movie. But we kind of get this notion up front. We get to meet Peavy, Alan Arkin, and the idea that this is their livelihood, right? This plane is everything they have, and by crashing it and it exploding on a barrel of gas, they're now in a world of hurt. And what are they going to do next? They have an old plane they need to fly, and lo and behold, they find this rocket that's been hidden. So who was it? The mob didn't do the original stealing, right? Or did they? And then they're the ones who hid it in the plane?
Yeah, they were hired to steal it, right?
It's actually weird because I think they kind of glossed over that, like what actually happened leading up to the stealing of. Like, I don't think they actually went into like, how did they steal this engine in the first place? Did they sneak into a factory and take it? Or was it like somebody transporting it? Or like, for as top secret as it was, they kind of got it pretty easily, it seemed.
Yeah. Uh-huh. It was definitely one of those things where you're going, wait, how did this even get... you let go because it's going to get the whole story going. But yeah, I'd love to know the backstory. Did they really go into Howard Hughes's vault and somehow do the best heist ever to get a hold of that thing?
That Frankenstein guy busted in the front door and just picked it up and walked out.
Oh, that Frankenstein guy. What a character, right? That felt like straight out of, to me, Dick Tracy.
Oh, yeah, for sure. The whole like makeup appliances on his face. And I kind of just love that kind of like just outside of reality kind of like fantasy kind of way this world is set up. I find that very endearing.
And I think endearing is a good word, right? The movie sets itself up to really roll in that way the entire time, because as we kind of move along with meeting Cliff, seeing his scenario, then we get introduced to Jenny, and yeah, I love the jokes that he had with the lady who was running. I'm going to call it the home, but is a sorority house. I don't know what she was at. Saying only gentlemen should be here, and he goes, "I'm no gentleman." And then also that she needs to have her back by 11, and he goes, "Thank you, warden." It's cute, it's simple, but it's just setting up that playfulness that I think Cliff as a character has, even though we're going to get into they're trying to pivot him to actually being not the best boyfriend in the world.
Well, Matt, didn't we figure out that we kind of thought that maybe where Jenny lives is like a home for single women in like the 30s?
It definitely kind of felt that way, the way they set it up. Like it was, I think a dormitory is probably the best word for it. It probably very much was like a, you're not in school anymore type dormitory for some people. Like it totally you'd never see that now. But I guess for the time it made a lot of sense, I guess, for them. But I don't know, I do agree. The one thing that I like about what they did with Cliff but specifically during that time period, you kind of get a sense for his charisma and his character.
Mm-hmm.
So they kind of set up, what he's like as a pilot. He's very daring. He's very, a risk taker. He's skilled.
But he's also willing to risk his life to save his friends, like the older guy who got himself into trouble.
But then you also see the side of him that's, playful, and like I feel like they're doing a fairly decent job of setting up, why somebody. Because I mean, if you really think about it, like how different would this movie have been had the mob driven into like a, like a car garage or something like that, like like these people who are used to flying and kind of being daredevils. And he's charismatic.
Like you just described the Fast and the Furious.
Don't say that too loud. Vin Diesel will have an idea for his next movie. So, like, I think that it did a fairly good job of trying to set up this character as a hero in a lot of ways, and why he would wear a rocket from a financial point of view and an adventurous point of view, and how he could pull it off. Because at the end of the day, like, you do have a jet engine stuck to your back. Who could possibly fly that? And then why would you want to see somebody even doing that? So it's kind of like a nice little, way of setting up what's to come.
That first flight, them being dangerous. Okay, them trying to figure out the pack and strapping it to the dummy, and sort of it feels campy to me. Very cheesy gags that they did with it. End up getting loose and flying back, and it diving into the ground to eventually making that decision to strap it on the back. How daring are you? Would you be willing to lose your legs for the sake of a jetpack?
No, there was like a gigantic flame just shooting into the back of legs, like half of this movie.
Yes, it was actually half. I think as we get to the end, there's a part where he takes off and it's just a gigantic plume of flame.
Right.
Like, wait, this is safe? Okay, cool.
I mean, to be fair, like this very much plays into, it's the same thing as like Superman and Iron Man, right? It very much plays into the idea of the, I feel like it is safe to say that everyone's had the dream of flying. Yeah. For me, it was, I'm getting the running start and then jumping and hopping into a flight or whatever. Apparently, other people have different experiences for theirs, but everyone's kind of had that dream of it. And I think with the way they filmed it and kind of the overall, ambiance of the flights taking place, even more so than obviously it was much more in the CG realm with a couple practical shots than like the airplane scene, but it very much tried to have like that whimsical nature of first flight, right?
Which they executed very well on, because it was a little loose, it was a bit crazy, And by the time we get to the point of him using the pack to save his buddy who's flying the plane on his behalf, uh, it's I think what I really liked about that particular scene is him flying up to the plane, being a bit out of control, falling off, free falling, turning it back on, flying up again, still not really being in control, not turning off, and then he falls off again. Third time's a try, and he's already like coasting into the wing a bit better and disengages the pack appropriately so he can start working with his buddy. Like he's doing some very, very quick on the job learning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it seemed like flight in general was intuitive to him. And I also liked how they kind of did things like they just kind of explained it just enough to make it seem believable, like how they put like a wing on the top of the helmet so that if he turns his head, it kind of like can control it. So they kind of explained that little tiny bit about how it worked to kind of like suspend my disbelief just a little bit to be like, okay, like I could see that this is happening, and so I believe that this is happening here.
How'd you feel about the helmet design?
Oh,
I
amazing.
love it. Yeah. I thought it was really clever to like and I thought it was interesting how they got the radio and how like the speakers on the radio kind of looked like the eye holes and how they just like cut a chunk of the middle of the radio out and they're like, okay, this is it. We're done. Like, here it is. Like, I thought it was really neat and like how they use like found materials and this whole like art deco style of the whole movie. Like, I'm sure we get into like the villain lair that was all like all this art deco, like club was all like, it was all this like really neat 30s style.
No, let's talk about Timothy Dalton, right? Because he gets to be Neville Sinclair. We understand that he's a great actor, and
Mhm.
and we get introduced to to me, I keep thinking of the scene that is all Princess Bride in my head and nothing else. He's fencing upstairs, shenanigans are happening. We know they're on set. There's the gag with the poor actress who can't act and just giving it to her the entire time. But you get back to the sort of a free flowing spirit of Cliff coming to a place where he's not supposed to be and then causing damage without really having the greatest concern for the repercussions of what could happen. Specifically being that Jenny was going to lose her job. He cares, but he still cares about himself a lot as well. So you get the kind of start of the idea of Neville creating a sort of a mini love triangle. One we know wasn't authentic because he had ulterior motives, but how'd you feel about Timothy Dalton?
I think it was great, to be honest. I think that
Yeah.
it was nice to see him almost playing against type in a way. I mean,
Mhm.
obviously he very much was James Bond.
Yeah.
And they played into that because he did have that suave, character type to him. I think that the aspect of his being an actor worked really. It's almost somewhat meta in a way
Right.
while you're
Right.
watching it.
Yeah.
And especially if you're anywhat vaguely aware of Hollywood during the 20s and 30s and the kind of is very much was big studio and the way that movies were made and the we very much have a celebrity culture now, but back then, I mean, they were gods, right? Like they were.
Mm-hmm.
Was his character not based on Errol Flynn?
I'm
At
sure it was kind
least
of an
in
amalgamation of like all those kind of like those actors from that time period.
yeah, I think at least in the comic book, if not the movie, he was based on Errol Flynn, and I think Jenny was kind of based on Betty Page.
Makes sense.
I'm going to be the one to admit I don't have an Errol Flynn reference.
There was a rumor that Errol Flynn was a Nazi because he, I might be misquoting it a little bit, but there was a guy who was like a Nazi who he like referred to him as like as an influence in his life, if I'm not mistaken. And so there was a rumor that he was like a Nazi spy.
Well, how much, and I guess I didn't read the comics, so you could tell me how much does this sort of World War II, theme come into play in the comics. Is it all over it?
It is, but it's not to this. I feel like there's probably more because it goes over a greater span of time.
Mm-hmm.
This very much this takes place in the span of 4 days or something like that.
Is it really 4 days?
It probably is, to be honest. There's probably not a lot of time from takeoff at the beginning till the very end. I don't think that there was
to
that
full
much.
Zeppelin flying over the skies.
I mean, you probably dated. I mean, technically, the Zeppelin trip, did happen during that time period. So you probably kind of date it during that time.
Mm-hmm.
So
right. I mean, I like how it's got this quasi-realistic history to it, like how there used to be a Hollywood land sign, and how
I actually really support that gag. As silly as it is, I really do support them knocking out the sign to make it just say Hollywood.
I mean, I love it how it was actually Hollywood land, and so I look at that and I think, oh hey, this is feasible, that this is why it's now Hollywood and not Hollywood land.
This is what they want from you. they want you to believe the lie, Bobby.
I totally believe it.
You're telling all your family members, anytime you visit LA, did you know?
Did you know that the Zeppelin crashed into it, and that's why?
I mean, there is such that element of it being that was it Man in the High Castle? Things that
right.
Just change history. Take all the familiar things but change it enough to, I guess, sadly, make it more interesting. History is interesting enough. Maybe make it less painful. How's that? How's that? So, okay, we have Neville as the bad guy. I do want to turn it because there was a couple scenes that had me going, wait, we talked about Cliff and him being whimsical. Maybe him being a bit selfish. We get to the scene. So they've already kidnapped Jenny. They're in the diner or the place, the little spot where they get food all the time. The mob guys come in. They're threatening everybody. And they're asking for Cliff, and there's no answer. They're about to burn Peavy's face off.
Yeah.
And no one's saying a thing. What the hell?
Loyalty. You can't buy that kind of loyalty.
Right.
Wait, but he's just sitting there being quiet. Even when they cut back to it, when he gets up from you weren't going to say a thing, were you? You bastard. You were going to let him turn into Two-Face.
It seemed like they had a plan to fight back the whole time, maybe.
Really? Are you sure?
Yeah.
His face is right above the grill, man.
Yeah,
I was concerned for Alan Arkin. I did not want Peavy's face to burn, and it got too close, too close. All that happened was him reading a sign on the board. Oh, wait, I know who Jenny is. We don't have to burn his face now.
I think that kind of played into a couple of the things that did happen in this movie, which were plot conveniences.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think you even called out when we were watching it. You're like, why'd they stop? There was no reason for them to stop. They could have just kept going.
Right.
We didn't want them to, but still.
I did like how the mobsters had the American integrity. They're like,
hey. Gosh.
They're like, hey, I may not earn an honest buck, but I'm 100% American. That's where he draws the line right there.
I mean, that is a great line, but it is also painful simultaneously. We get into the turn, right? So we know Neville wants that rocket, and but we don't know why, and it's Jenny who kind of figures out that he's a spy. So we get to the reveal before everyone else does. And they definitely use that mob scene as a way to say, hey, you're working with the bad guy, but are you sure you're working with the right bad guy? And that gives the exact notion that you did there. And of course he has the line. He's like, what do you care where my money comes from? For most guys, bad guys, that's the limit, right?
I mean, they have to have some sort of moral code, right? It's probably there. It's tiny, but it's like old Scarface. He, for as bad as he was and all the terrible things he did, he still gave to his community, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And so I think that does kind of play into that kind of tradition of, are they terrible people? Yes, but would they join up with Nazis? No. Would they, murder a baby or something like that? Probably not. They have like a moral code. It's just at the end of the day, like a lot of the kind of stuff they do, it's it's business, right?
Mm-hmm.
If they need to whack somebody, they'll whack somebody. If they need to, extort some money, they'll extort some money. But it's just business. Whenever it came down to, are they going to be on the Nazi side or the non-Nazi side? They chose the non-Nazi side. So
right. I mean, you have to look at the time frame too. It's like right at the start of World War II, seems like.
Well, this is the thing, right? At this point, the movie's already ramped up into it's turned bombastic because it went from we just want to get this rocket, and then we get to hang out with Howard Hughes. We get served propaganda film, which was kind of cool, right? These packs can apparently travel across the Atlantic. They're pretty good with flight, according to the cartoon that I saw.
Wait, we can't gloss over Howard Hughes and the great John Locke, Terry O'Quinn.
This is very, very true.
One of my favorite, if not my very favorite, Howard Hughes interpretations on film.
No, it was definitely very good. I mean, the interactions he has with Cliff, and again, Cliff just trying to punch every FBI agent that he can see and not get arrested for it. But just the even what was it? It was the Spruce Goose, right? The model.
and the funny thing is, like, Peavy gives Howard Hughes like flight tips. Like, what you should do is add a second chamber to the to the rocket to make sure it doesn't overheat. Like, so Peavy is like the world's foremost aviation expert, apparently.
Which is good because you wanted that. It makes you attach more to the character, right? Oh, look, he's even smarter than Howard Hughes. But no, Terry Quinn does a great job as Howard Hughes, and there's a sort of weight to his character every time he's on screen.
Yeah,
like you feel the authority of him being Howard Hughes
for sure.
As the smartest one in the room. He really does do a great job.
Great casting.
Should probably also call out. I mean, to me, if I think about the Rocketeer, the two people that I think of the most that are behind the scenes, Arthur Schmidt, who does the film editing. Watching this again, it just shows how well the pacing is done in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the man has like edited some of like the best movies out there. I mean, he edited Forrest Gump, Back to the Future, Pirates of the Caribbean, Curse of the Black Pearl. Like he has a roster of movies that show he's just a great editor. And of course, I mean, James Horner, music.
Yeah. No,
this
so
movie
delightful.
is made by that music.
Yeah, that's so wonderful. Even the director is very interesting. Joe Johnston, who has Star Wars pedigree and directed the first Captain America movie.
Actually, when you think about it, this movie had a lot of stars in alignment, and it's shocking that it didn't do better during the time period.
Was it considered more of a cult movie now?
It is for sure.
Really?
It did not do well.
Shame on us. I wanted to see a Rocketeer too, man. Shame on all you moviegoers who had a chance to go watch this at the time. Come on.
Wait.
Rocketeer too.
This was 91. Could Bobby have watched this? Did you skip out on this, or did you give him the money to get to Rocketeer 2? Because I was like 5 or 6 at the time. So,
well, I was like -4, but I did actually watch this movie in the theaters. I was pretty young, but I did actually watch this movie in theaters. And to my credit, maybe it was like the 10-year re-release, but I did actually watch this movie in the theaters, and I thought it was very neat, very cool at the time.
There, Bobby. 10-year re-release. Good job.
Yeah, it was at least the 25-year re-release. So watched it when I was 10 years old. Yeah.
Good Lord. It is kind of wild to me because I think it is we're spoiling what we're going to talk about later, but it is a very, very good watch is a simple way of putting it. And it is surprising to hear that this falls under cult film status. I could imagine you could tell me whether or not that's the case here, Matt. Is this a big cosplay character?
I mean, if I could, I would for sure. But I like, if I do it, I would do it all out. Like I'd have like the jetpack with, smoke shooting out of the back and a speaker in it. So it sounds like it's actually going, because that sound effect too. The sound effect is great. The whirling of the motor and everything. Like if you're going to do it, you got to do it. But it's on the dream list, right?
I would love to see it.
I'd actually like to see this back in the parks again. Like, especially if they do an anniversary. I'd love to see a Rocketeer back in the Disneyland or Disney World.
Well, because there's parts, especially with the way, again, back to how it was shot. One of the notes I wrote down was soaring over California.
Yeah, they play the music in the queue.
Oh, that entire area of Disneyland. Like, it's very much right out of that time period. You could, because don't they have like right by Soarin', they have a plane. Just replace that with the yellow one. You're good to go.
Right.
Yeah,
you just have them stand next to it.
And a park's Easter egg is that one of the popcorn vendors, there's a little Rocketeer guy like churning the popcorn if you look inside.
I wonder what might be holding him back.
Probably the lack of money the first time around.
Yeah, or need to start that online petition. More Rocketeer, please.
Well, I feel like Disney Plus is a pretty good venue to start it back up.
So you're saying you need to stream it multiple times over and over again so they think there's interest.
Right.
Isn't that how it works now? So bombastic nature, things ramp up. We're at the Griffith Observatory doing full Tommy gun shootouts to ride in a friggin' Zeppelin that's supposedly over Los Angeles. At this point, you definitely have to let go of a lot, because when that thing comes on screen, you're like, wait a second.
It's not ride in, it's ride on top of.
Yes. Yes, they ride on top of said Zeppelin. And in. How was the gag with the pilot of the Zeppelin?
You mean when he gets knocked out?
Yes.
We have the best
pilot. We have the best pilot, and then the next scene is him getting knocked through a window.
The best setup ever. Like this movie shockingly had like those every once in a while comedy moments that were pretty dang good. Like that, and we don't have a house, we've got a gazebo.
Right.
There's lots of great moments in there.
Oh my gosh, how did I not even bring up that particular scene? How's everyone not dead? They turned that thing into cheese. The amount of fire that they put on that particular house. Oh my gosh. Yeah, it was kind of ridiculous. So as we get to the end of the film and you get Howard Hughes handing off a brand new plane to Cliff, how sick did that plane look?
Yeah, that was really
Was that
awesome.
a different plane or was it the same plane?
I think it was a different one.
Was it the same plane with a different paint job?
Oh, looked really similar. I always assumed it was just like a brand new one, but was it the same one refurbished?
I just thought they repainted it. Like from a prop perspective, they used the same exact plane, repainted it so that it looked like. I don't know if it was supposed to be the same plane, like they had fixed it, or if he just given it. Like I kind of felt like he just went into his garage and was like, I'll give him that one over there. I imagine this guy was like Jay Leno. He just got a hangar full of planes.
Right. Yeah, that totally makes sense. I picture that as well.
And this is why I want the flight movie. I basically want Top Gun Rocketeer style, where we get to see the stunt shows, and now it's a totally different film piece, and maybe somehow he gets a hold of the pack again, and now he's making money off of the show doing it that way. No, maybe. Okay, fine. I'll just be alone on this.
No,
one.
I think that's what the sequel would be. I mean, it clearly was set up for like, the Nazis are back again. We could really use a jetpack guy to help us.
We could use the one jetpack guy.
Yeah.
Well, okay. You could totally set up a movie plot for it. Like they need him to go rescue somebody, like behind enemy lines.
Exactly.
Right.
And they need somebody who could fly in because they're like, if we fly in a plane, it's going to get shot down. But the Rocketeer, he could get in there.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. It's a rescue movie.
And now wait, isn't he the Falcon?
Almost.
Like just a little.
Don't even get me started on how I want to tie this into the MCU. Don't get me
Oh,
going down that
okay.
road.
All right, that is a path we will avoid. Matt, are you recommending this movie?
Yes. That's it. Yes.
Just a yes. Tell the people to watch it. Bobby, are you recommending this movie?
Yes, I found it wholesomely delightful, and I would love to just watch it over and over and over again. If for nothing else, just the music alone.
Wholesomely delightful. Wow, look at that. That is a very positive recommendation from you.
The longest words I've used all year.
I was about to say, yeah, this is one of those films where so it's on Disney Plus, you're saying?
Yep.
Everyone go, if you're paying for it, get on your Disney Plus, watch this. If you haven't seen it, I think you will leave very, very pleasantly surprised at a film that, yes, is probably undervalued in the annals of time. So we want to get it overvalued. So watch that film, get some interest. I think it'll be something that you enjoy a lot. As always, thank you for listening. And remember, it's all part of the show.